So I don't care about car segments. To me, they're irrelevant, they're confusing. But this car, the S70, is a car that has all to prove because of the segment it finds itself in. It's a car that offers apparently all the practicality and size and all the features and perks of a C-segment sedan, but at the price of a Japanese B-segment sedan. So, starting price, 74,000 ringgit, but 95,000 ringgit for this flagship X. That is a killer elevator pitch.
But it's playing with the big boys now. Things are serious, and by claiming territory in the C segment, it awoke its final boss. To us, there is no more unforgiving of a benchmark than the Honda Civic FE, a car we know to be an achingly competent high watermark in nearly all aspects.
Can a Proton really hope to compete? Let's find out. My name is Jim, and this is Carlist.
These days, car segments are really confusing, that they're almost irrelevant now. The important part is by attacking the car as the S70 and not the S50. Proton put a lot of extra expectations onto it. Once the dust settled, it did make sense. They already have a B-segment car in the persona, so they didn't need one more. And given the on-paper specs, the S70 does deserve the higher rank. On size alone, the Civic is clearly the bigger car. Wheelbase is most important here, as it does dictate interior space. The S70 has 108mm less of it than the Civic, but everywhere else, the S70 does come close or exceeds it. Nose to tail, the S70 is down by 76mm, but actually is the wider of the two by 7mm. It's also 51mm taller than the Civic, but I'm not sure that's a good thing.
So there are four variants of the S70, okay? The Executive and Premium, and then the Flagship X. To us, if you're considering the S70, please forget about the Executive and Premium. It's all about the Flagship and Flagship X.
The Executive is too kosong la for a 74k car. I mean, halogen headlights, fabric seats, and manual fold mirrors. Come on. The Premium is better equipped, yeah, but has a worse infotainment system and still doesn't have ADAS. They need to make this table stakes, guys, especially with the Saga Persona at this point, especially so with AEB, if nothing else. Proton knows this.
So between the Flagship and Flagship X, what do you get? You get the Aero kit over here, you get a sunroof, and you get a built-in dashcam. So narrowed down to two worthwhile variants, the most expensive variant of the S70 is still 37,000 ringgit less expensive than the least expensive Civic, and this is basically the Civic on steroids. It just took the Super Soldier serum. It is the RS EHEV for 168,000 ringgit. So under the bonnet we have a 1.5 litre 3-cylinder turbo petrol engine. It's the same engine that you find in the X50 but not the Flagship. So it lacks direct injection, MPI over here. Power is 150 PS and 228 Newton meters of torque paired to a 7-speed DCT. In the real world, this engine gives this car more performance than the Vios, than the Almera, than the City, even the RS IMMD. This is definitely its biggest flex, its single largest justification for calling this a big boy C-segment car. Remember, the M Grand sold everywhere else by Geely has a wheezy 1.5 litre NA with I think like 100 horsepower, barely enough to move it out of its way. Thank you Proton for actually fighting to acclimatize this engine into this car. And you know what, it opens doors to so many other things. They can actually push this engine further and actually come out with a S70 R3.
I like it. It's a handsome car, and not just, for a Proton. But clearly, this is still a Geely M Grand. Very little has changed. Actually, apart from the badges, the big one is the grille, which looks way nicer now than the one they slapped on the M Grand. There's projector LED headlights, but interestingly, no fog lamps. The two-tone 17-inch wheels do look nice. I really like the profile and the roofline. Proportions look correct and avoids the tiny shopping trolley wheel syndrome of the Beza and the Persona. The rear visor style light bar tail lamp things, they're okay as a trend, but kind of played out. The rear light show is cool, but I wonder if I can disable it.
I'm still torn on the Aero kit. It adds a front, side, and rear skirt, but I don't know if I like it enough for this car because it's nicely integrated, but these little wings and way it extends out, it gives the impression of like flyaway hairs on the side of your head.
Against the Civic, the Proton shouldn't feel inadequate, but the Honda just has a more effortlessly masculine aesthetic. The flatter bonnet, the more coupe-like roofline, and sportier RS touches here and there, they seem to integrate much better with the overall design.
All of it adds up to a car that really looks very cohesive and more expensive. This is the only car that I know of as well that is non-premium that comes standard with Michelin tires. Pilot Sport 4s. So which you guys think is the better looking car? The S70 or the Civic? Let us know in the comments. On the boot itself, you have the second justification why this is more of a C-segment car, because this has a 500-liter boot, actually a little bit bigger by 3 liters over the Civic. The only thing is that the underside of the boot is not painted, not covered with any kind of lining, and the same thing goes for the brace over there, which the rear seats rest against. Looks really cheap. So I like sedans. I'm not an SUV guy, and I suspect why people like SUVs, or at least a little bit of why, is that they don't want to actually bend their knees to go in the car, so they can just slide in, because the H point is about the same as the average waist height, you know? But for a sedan, you have to bend your knees. Is that a big deal for you guys? Let us know that too in the comments. But when you're inside the S70, it is a very nice interior. Everything feels high quality, at least what you can touch right away. Because the overall aesthetic over here is very minimal and very modern. Everything over here kind of feels nicely weighted and damped. Look how weighted and nicely and gracefully it falls for this cubby. And also, the glove box comes down with a nice, soft opening. And the steering wheel feels nicely positioned. I can get into a nice, comfortable, confident position when I'm driving. And all feels well considered, which I can't say the same about the other cars in Proton's range. But the only disappointment is that, yes, things are generally soft touch, but over here, the highest point where you'd be putting your elbow on is quite hard. So the sunroof is a USP, but you get only that in the flagship X. So it's worth the 5,000, I suppose. It's a small sunroof, not a panoramic sunroof, but you don't get this in the Civic. You can only get this if you want the C segment in the Mazda 3, which is more expensive. Also, check out the clarity of the 360 cam. It's really, really clear. I don't know who supplies the cameras on this one, but it's really clear, even at night. It's really impressive, actually. So, the infotainment screen is useful. You can even have Spotify and Jukes Music, if you use that, to stream music directly to the car. But there is still no Apple CarPlay / Android Auto support, but it is coming. At this point, we're pretty used to being disappointed with Proton about this topic, but I hear soon we will get it, starting with the X90 and soon after that, the S70. So there's 2 cup holders, and they have like 2 tiers, okay? One is sort of shallow but wide enough for this little bottle over here. The other one is deeper but narrower, so you can fit one of these bottles quite securely, and that actually opens up to a very nicely sized center cubby, which actually expands because you actually take this part out. We've got to talk about this gear selector, okay? I actually like it. I heard a lot of people don't like it for some reason. I think it's a good compromise, even though it could be improved. The gold standard for this E-shifter type things to me are BMW, because those notches before you actually like pull from P to N to R to drive or whatever are very defined, and they're very smooth as well, so you can actually actuate them without even looking. So to combat the opposite effect where you have new automakers, I won't name names, but they're very vague about how the notches or when the notches actually engage. So to combat that, every pull down action is a notch. So if I want to go into, and I'm in drive, I pull down twice, go back into neutral, or sorry, reverse, 2 up, park, over here, drive again, 2 down. It's very, everything is clear, there's no confusion, and it's very safe. So this is the AHEV, so it doesn't work like a normal pedal shifter system. This controls the regen braking, but in the 1.5 Civic, the turbo or the RS or whatever, it does work with the CVT for virtual ratios, and it works really, really well. You don't really have to go with an E-shifter just because it's the new thing. Sometimes the old ways are better. Honda really is an expert in making a car feel like quality. Even though this car isn't premium, it is edging on that border with the premium, okay? The fit and finish is really, really good. The materials are excellent. Everywhere, literally, is soft touch. And hey, look, my old friend, Apple CarPlay. Been missing you. But in the rear seats is where the Honda magic really is visible, because this is where the 108mm advantage this car has in wheelbase over the S70 comes into play, because look how much legroom I have. Look, I know the city has D segment levels of legroom. This car has maybe D+, but look, lots of legroom. I'm 165 and this is where I sit. Headroom wise, it's pretty good too. Look, I am 165 cm and I have about 11 cm of headroom. So if you're over 6 foot, this car is more than enough, even though it does have this kind of fastback coupe-ish roofline. But that said, it's not bad in here. The S70 has quite a lot of room for rear passengers. I'm 165, I'm sitting over here in my position. Quite a lot of knee room for me, but if you have someone taller, you would be a little bit more cramped back here. That said, it is still pretty good. Headroom wise, I'm pretty sure, even with the inclusion of the sunroof, I think I have more headroom. Let's just see. I got about 14 cm, and that makes sense because the S70 is actually a bit taller than the Civic. It is good for under thigh support. It's fair as well, and notice over here you get much less of a hump, so you can actually like support somebody who is sitting in the middle, won't have a hard time. You have also air conditioning vents and a USB-C port to accompany a USB-A port. So in the A70, the first thing I noticed is that there is no 3-cylinder rattle, at least from the inside. When you are in drive, okay, going really, really slowly, maybe in traffic, you just kind of like push the pedal a bit too much and the car will just lunge forward. And it happened to me the first day, okay? I was driving this car for about 2 hours already. I was in traffic, going a junction, okay? I was at a T-junction trying to like muscle my way through, and it was drizzling. The road surface was a bit wet, and I actually spun the wheels a little bit because I was trying to edge my way closer to the car in front to kind of muscle my way into it. Sorry. And the wheels spun a little bit. I'm like, whoa, this is too much. So right now, stand still, let the car off the brake, let it creep, and then let your foot gradually push down the accelerator pedal. That's the only way, because otherwise you're gonna lunge forward, man. What's up with that? But for the most part, a C-segment car is something that you buy because you want a do-it-all sedan, you want a bigger sedan, but you have the performance to explore it a little bit more, to have a bit more fun with it. And this handling characteristic, yes, it's still softer, it's not super sharp, but it is a little bit on the edge. It does want to play a little bit. It's definitely got that Proton Lotus ride and handling DNA. And that's really, really important because all the cars in this segment, well, the last two remaining, the Civic and the Mazda 3, both handle really well. I think you can extract a little bit more fun out of it if you swap the tires out. Right now it runs Goodyear, what was it? Goodyear Assurance Duraplus Triple Max, whatever. Anyway, if you fit grippier tires, sportier tires, you could make this car maybe like 10%, 15% more pointy at the nose. A torsion beam makes sense. My car has a torsion beam. The Civic has a multi-link. The Mazda 3 has a multi-link, but those are much more expensive cars. And to 93.5% of the global population, they cannot tell whether or not they're driving in a car with a multi-link suspension at the rear or a torsion beam. They won't be able to tell. And even less people will be able to appreciate that. And think about all the cars that are really, really fast and known for being fast that have a torsion beam. My car has a torsion beam, the Peugeot RCZ, and I have no real complaints. I have no real complaints about how it drives. I think it's fine. Then again, I'm not very aggressive with it. But look, the Megane RS, the Clio RS, all those cars have a torsion beam. So I guess they're bad now because they don't have a multi-link setup. Come on. In town, the low speed refinement, I'm right now on like some kind of like cobbled road kind of thing. The car actually does feel like it's absorbing a lot of those imperfections very well. And it feels like a refined car. It feels leagues better, just in terms of like when you sit down right now, the things you feel, the sensations that you feel through the chassis and onto your bum from the road, it does feel like a more expensive car and definitely leagues better than the Persona. Do I say it's better than the City, better than the Almera, better than the Vios? Maybe by like 10%, but not much, okay? But this does feel like a more expensive either Continental or Japanese car. To thread this car around narrow city streets is just about as easy as you know, the Japanese B segment cars that I'm sure at this point you're already sick of me repeating the names of. But it is that easy because this car isn't especially long or wide. The steering is pretty light. Yeah, it's an agile car to drive. I guess that, you know, that Lotus ride and handling DNA. But as a consequence of that, it's actually quite light on its feet at slow speeds, you know? So you can give this to your mom and she'll be able to drive around and go to the market and stuff, no problem. This is the gold standard. This is the Honda Civic. Yes, I know, we're in the hybrid, not an apple to apple comparison, but you know, the whole as a product, the Civic, the way this drives is designed to be very similar to how the 1.5 turbo drives as well. You know, yes, it's quieter and everything, and yes, it is more expensive. In fact, for the price of Honda Civic RS eHEV right here, 168K, you can actually buy the S70 Flagship X, and you can also buy a S70 Executive. So 2 S70s for the price of one Honda Civic. There's a very cohesive feel about how things operate, how things are laid out, how things feel, how the car actually feels underneath you. It just feels very together, like nothing is really out of place, like it was developed as a single cohesive product. And that's something I don't feel is so evident in the S70. The S70 does feel good, but then maybe you can say, well, it feels good for a Proton. Sometimes, like right now, okay, the engine, I can't even tell it's on or not, and it just feels like I'm driving an EV. It's just instant pickup, and underneath you, the car feels so together. Yes, the S70 does feel good around the corners, as some of that, you know, whatever knowledge that was downloaded into the Proton team from Lotus has made itself evident in the S70. But it is still a Geely product based on the BMA platform, the same as the X50. You can tell it's not quite as super refined in here. It is just refined and refined and refined. It's so good to drive. So what are you missing out? What are you missing out when you settle for the S70? Okay, I would say yes, refinement. I have no sensation, even though right now I'm wearing Pilot Sport 4 tires, I would have no sensation that I'm losing out on any refinement characteristics because it is so quiet. And maybe that's just down to the fact, again, that the S70 does need more sound insulation material, especially around the wheel arches, just to dampen that road noise. If you had to, okay, maybe you are a Civic driver right now, and for some reason or another, you had to drive an S70 for the next month. Yes, you'll miss the Civic, but that gap, that sense of loss wouldn't hit you that hard, to be honest, okay? As you get to know the S70, you realize that a lot of the things that you liked, like creature comfort-wise, the things that you really, really, you know, needed on a day-to-day basis, the S70 really provides, maybe except Apple CarPlay. So, where do we stand? Look, first of all, I gotta say, I'm pretty proud of Proton for having a car that can literally stand in the same league as a Honda Civic, and at a time when the Honda Civic in this generation is the best it's ever been. And let's face it, back in the day, the Preve and the Suprema weren't really up to the task competing with the big boys in the C segment. But ultimately, people just buy this car based on price. And that isn't a bad thing. To emphasize price in this case, not to excuse any major downside, is to emphasize how much car you're getting for your money. Sure, this car won't tear away people who are into buying a Honda Civic or buying a Mazda 3. But if you are in the market for a Japanese B segment sedan, a Honda City, a Toyota Vios, what's the other one again? The Nissan Almera. You would be doing yourself a huge disservice by not taking a hard look at the Proton S70. And if you made it this far, thank you. Why not like and subscribe if you found this video useful, and let us know what you think in the comments. Until next time, see ya.